Hi there, welcome back to the channel. It's turn 9 of Saratoga, which in game terms is now hitting the late afternoon, round about 4 o'clock. The game so far has predominantly been one of logistical challenges, to put it politely, up here with the British as they struggle to navigate a straight road, and combat, quite intense fighting here as the Americans valiantly defend Freeman's Farm against the ever-growing numbers of British and Allied troops in the region. Before I start the game turn proper, a quick note about my use of momentum chits in the last video. Basically, I used one of these to allow the Americans to re-roll the initiative. However, that was incorrect. They should have bid that chit to have a +2 onto their modifier. Now you can do this, both players can do this in the initiative phase if they have any, and you can adjust the die rolls based on the initiative chits that you bid. Alternatively, what you can do is you can spend 3 to dictate the turn order for the turn that's about to be played. The other use is in close combat, where you do the die roll. So I get slightly muddled between the initiative play and the close combat play. Don't think it's really going to have made a huge difference, but just to clarify how that should have worked. So let's go into that initiative roll then. I won't bid any of those chits, only the American player has them. But actually, that's a good question. I say I won't, but then that +2 would be quite useful. If we were to go first, would allow us to maneuver a little bit out of the way of the Americans around the Freeman's Farm region. Okay, yeah, let's do it. Let's do it properly. We're going to use this to have a +2 to the American die roll. Okay, rolling for the initiative. We have a 5, which is modified to a 7, and a 1. So that momentum chit was actually completely unnecessary, as it turned out. But never mind, we do now have an American initiative on this turn. A quick note, the Americans should also, or they could also at this point, be rolling to release Gates's wing if they haven't been released already. That's these darker blue counters. Now, because of the proximity of this unit here to this X, we're okay. We don't need to roll for that. They were actually released some time ago. I just haven't moved them very much due to the requirements to garrison certain hexes, and also with all the logistical flapping around that the British have done over there, there's not really been any particular need to do that. Just to note as well, the morale track for the army would have modified that roll even further for the initiative, meaning we should have had a +1 additionally on the American die roll anyway. Okay, nuances of this game. Let's begin with the Americans' turn now, and that turn does begin with the movement. And as I said, I'm going to hopefully move some of these guys. Now, we do have to move out of a zone of control, but we don't need to worry too much about where we're going, because this is not a zone of control. The hexes for forests do not count for zones of control, so we're just going to move there, and then we're going to probably stay, I think, because that will mean we still project that zone of control into Freeman's Farm, causing the British to need to move us on in order to claim that VP. The objective area covers the whole of Freeman's Farm, and basically it's slightly different for the Americans. The Americans have to get 2 units there. The British have to have no enemy zone of control in the region and a unit in the centre. But anyway, Arnold's guys are going to do the same thing. They're going to move back. That's 2.5, I think. No, it's just 1.5. The +1 modifier only applies to the rifle units, entering or exiting rifle units, zones of control. So that's 1.5 to there. And then I think what we'll do is we'll move the unit back in over here. Slight little shuffle, but what that does is it does allow these units here to move around slightly. So we're going to go 1.5 and then back in, and these guys will go 1 due to the road, 2.5, 3.5. Cool. Apologies, I do have a bit of a cold at the moment, and if you hear me struggling slightly as we go, that's why. Okay, that I think is all the movement I want to do. There's really no much point in us moving any of these other units up here, even if we could move, and most of them we now can't, with the exception of the militia that are hovering around the powder magazine. It might be worthwhile bringing those forward, actually. 1, 2, 3, extra 1 due to the slope, and then 4, 1, 2, 3, and then 4. Okay, cool, that's definitely movement done. Rallying this unit under here, the 2nd New York, needs to roll a +5, or a 5+ even, to free that disruption. We've rolled a 6. That would be modified by the unit's morale, but that would just push it up even more. So we have a freed disruption, and the morale track does get adjusted due to the morale benefit of rallying. Okay, anything else? Defensive artillery. The cannon cannot hit us here. The line of sight is blocked by their own side. Here, 1, 2, 3, 4. It's a strength of 2. We could try some defensive fire against the artillery behind the fieldworks there. That would require us hitting on a 9. Let's try it. We may as well. Stranger things have happened, but no. We've got a 4. We had a 4 before I knocked it over. Okay, moving on to rifle fire. Rifle fire, again, similar principle. We need to roll. Here it's going to be a 4+ because we're adjacent, and the Morgan unit has a strength of 3. And that is only a 3, which is kind of rubbish. But then when we look at the modifiers, that number is actually modified downwards because the Prince unit just here is actually sat in the forest, and so there's a negative modifier to the hit roll there as well. So nothing much happened there. Okay, we now move on to combat phase. Okay, so here again we have a number of combats. Troops need to be split between fights, really. Here we have a straight 6 against 6, which would be a 1-to-1. Here we have something slightly more complex. We have Arnold's stack, which is a 6 against a 5. And then here we have the 8th Massachusetts and the 1st New Hampshire's against Earl Balcarres and the 24th, which would be again a 1-to-1. So across the board, these are relatively even matched. And we saw how that turned out for the British last time. Okay, let's roll then. Starting with the Morgan rifle units, we will skirmish with the Morgan rifle unit. The solo assistant will probably tell us we need to roll a d8, but let's just double check. So we are engaging without a leader. They have a withdraw possible, so we will roll a d8 on that first table. That's a 4, and we have a skirmish and a skirmish, meaning I believe that's a 0 die roll modifier to that particular combat. Okay, rolling the die for combat, that was a 0. Skirmish on a skirmish is a 0. So rolling a die, we have a 9. Wow, that's a good result for the Americans. That is modified by Morgan, our lead unit, to a +2, so that's going up to 11. No leaders, nothing else is applicable in terms of those modifiers. We're not surrounded, there's not militia, there's no dragoons, nobody's disrupted or shattered. The Morgan rifle unit does not have any disadvantages in close combat here because it is stacked with the Dearborn unit, meaning that the only thing we really need to do is adjust the morale back down by 1 for the fact that Prince unit has a +1 morale, which means we have Actually, no, we don't, because the British side are at a -1, so we stay at 11. And the attacking modifiers are done. The defending modifiers, we just did the Prin's morale, which was negated by the army track. Nothing else is applicable, and therefore we have a 9 on a 1-to-1. Wow, that's pretty nasty disruption there for the Prin's unit. Now that means they need to withdraw 3 and then flip over to a disruption. 1, 2 and 3, following the priorities. And then that morale does have to come down again for the British. Their morale is plummeting now, the British side, and that's difficult because if they ever hit 0, the game is over. But Morgan and Dearborn will now advance after combat into the hex that was vacated by the Prin's unit. Cool. Next combat, we have Arnold Skies against the Grenadiers. That's a 1-to-1, 6 versus 5, which is a 1-to-1. And we will take advantage, I think, of that open flank to... Let's turn the flank. As I've said before, I don't actually know what that means. There's no real description as to what that represents historically in the game. Must be something to do with the way the armies fought each other, I would assume, but I'm not sure what that is, so I don't know quite what it means. But here it means we potentially have a decent modifier as the attackers. But first we need to roll for the von Ryserdal unit sat there in the cornfield. Withdraw is possible, therefore we will probably roll in the same table as before, which was a d8, and we rolled an 8 on that d8, meaning the von Ryserdal unit will attack on echelon against our turn flank. And that ends up being a +1 for the American side. Okay, cool. Rolling the die once again. I apologise, that wasn't the von Ryserdal unit we were attacking. We're actually attacking the Grenadiers down here, but it is nevertheless still a +1 modifier to us from the tactics chip. So let's roll that die. We have a 3 plus the 1 turns it to a 4, just using the red die there to show the modified DRM. We then +1 for the 9th Massachusetts, who are our lead unit, +2 for the benefit of Arnold, pushing that up to 7. There are no other modifiers applicable as the attacker. The defenders will modify the result by their morale, which is currently actually -2. So although the Grenadiers do have a fairly decent morale themselves of +2, they are going to have no modifier to that number, meaning sadly that is a 7 on a 1-to-1, which is a retreat for the defenders this time. So we are pushed back once again as the defenders, and Arnold will just move on in. Something I really wish we hadn't done, because we're now bang up against the artillery there, which won't mean anything this turn, but if I don't sort that out next turn, that's potentially bad news for Arnold, going straight into the teeth of the cannon there. Right, final combat of this American phase of turn 9. It's 1-to-1. The 9th Massachusetts and the 1st New Hampshires again, sorry, the 8th Massachusetts, yeah, the 8th, and the 1st New Hampshires against the Earl of Balcarres and the 24th. We will once again choose skirmish, I think, as the American player, as the attacking side, and then we will roll that dice. Withdraw is possible, so it's going to be the same table as before on the solo assistant. This time they've rolled a 6, which on the table there is a stand fast. Okay, so stand fast versus skirmish is a -1 to our result. Okay, so the Americans are at the disadvantage at the moment. So we rolled a 4, which was reduced to a 3 from that tactics play. The Massachusetts are our lead unit, therefore that goes back up to 4. There's no modifiers for anything else, I don't believe. The lead unit, the Earl of Belcars, for the defending side is a 0, but we then have a -2, so we're going up from 4 up to 6. So the final DRM on a 1-to-1 is a 6, resulting in a retreat for both sides. Wow, okay. So the Earl of Belcars is going backwards, as are the 8th Massachusetts. Both of them will now have to roll for their compatriots there. So let's roll them both at the same time. Okay, so the Americans have a 2 + 1. That is a bad result, so they are also retreating. The British have a 5, but that is modified by the army track, which is currently at -2, so they are also retreating. Okay, combat is done. We don't need to worry about automatic victory, so we're jumping straight into the British turn. As the British player, I'm starting to wonder whether or not this battle is going as well as I'd hoped. We've lost a few units, a couple of leaders have been killed, and we still can't control Freeman's Farm, and we're nowhere near Bemis Heights at the moment. Right, we need to really think about what we're going to do here, because crossing this line here is going to be tricky. I mean, that really is the only place you can realistically cross, because it's going to take such a long time to get across here. This road just goes to nowhere. This is all creek and hillside and forest, and unless you've got light infantry, getting across that will take forever. So realistically, only way forward we can go is this way. Now, assuming we have 4 turns to do that, a full 4 turns, assuming the game doesn't end early for some reason, I still don't think we're going to get to where we need to be here at Bemis Tavern. That's a problem. These guys here, this Morgan and Arnold and the New Hampshires and the New Yorkers, they have really delayed the advance here so much that we're really running out of time for an automatic victory. So the best we can hope for is some kind of attritional victory, maybe taking Freeman's Farm, but that's proving harder than I thought. Okay, so for movement, I really am starting to think I want to at least try my best to clear out this hex here, and then try to get over that fieldwork into Bemis Tavern, which is the automatic victory hex. Don't think we're easily going to get here, which is the other VP hex under there, which is Fort Nelson. But then, having said that, it's about as likely as it is over this side, isn't it? Okay, movement. Now, last turn I kind of skimmed over this a little bit in the last video. So, but let's concentrate on that a little bit now. We have a whole stack of people there. Now, the artillery, who I really would like to be in front, are only going to be able to move 1, 2, 3. Okay, that's not so bad. They're all going to be able to move 3. So let's all move them as a stack. They are now adjacent to the units there on the other side of the fieldworks, and these guys can come along. 1, 2, 3. That's where they have to stay. 1, 2, 3. And again, that's where I'll have to stay. I kind of want to try to come round, but I'm not going to be able to do it. I think I may have left it too late, or the disorganisation down that river road may have put time against me. Okay, that's probably all I'll do there. Those 2 cannons sat here at Wilbur Basin are probably not going to be doing much now apart from defending should the Americans try and punch through themselves. Just wonder if I've not left far too many forces there, although it is mostly the Navy that are sat there at the moment. Okay, this side though we have... What do we have? That's an excellent question. We have 3 disrupted units that can only move 1 hex apiece. And do you know what? Let's move them. Let's move these ones anyway. We'll move them just there. Reason being, I would like to move this one down. 1, 2, 3. There we go. These hexes are not a zone of control because they're forest. However, within this game you can move from zone of control to zone of control so long as you stop. That's my understanding. Whereas I know a lot of games you can't move from zone of control to zone of control. But in this one I believe you can. Right. Now we need to think about how to best do this. Let's move 1, 2. We can't stack because that would be a 7, but we can move 1.5, 2.5. Moving there would bring it to 4.5, unfortunately. Oh, what? Okay. Fine. What else can we do? The light infantry can come forward. 1, 2, 3. That's fine. The cannon here can come and sit with those guys. Both of these can come with the cannon there. Okay, so all of this shuffling around means hopefully we've got a little bit of a concentrated attack against the Arnold unit, and also something hopefully we can do against the Morgan group as well. First though, let's move these guys up a wee bit. 1, 2, 3.5. In fact, we could probably stack all of those together. They've only got between them a total of 5 strength points or combat points. So those militia there are pretty weak, but in combination with the others, hopefully that will prove decisive against Arnold. That's it for combat. Not combat. That's it for movement. Just to rally, let's rally firstly the unit here, 5+, modifying by the morale, which is going to be a -1 because of the army track. That's a 4, so they're not rallying. Those guys there will also be a -1 modifier. Again, not rallying. And the third group there, the redcoats, are rallying. They are rallying. Oh, fantastic. Okay, so that is pushing the morale track for the British back up slightly to less of a disaster. Right. Jumping into our defensive artillery and then rifle. So defensive artillery, the only place really is up the top there on the creek where we're finally starting to get some action. And that's going to be a 7+ to hit for the Americans. They've rolled halfway house, so let's roll it again. They've rolled a 4. The modifiers won't do anything to get that to 7. So that will be that, I think, for the defensive fire for the artillery. Yeah, that's it for the defensive fire for the artillery. The Morgan unit is going to rifle fire, and let's rifle fire at this group here. Let's rifle fire at von Ryserdal again in that stack. So that's going to be a 4+. That's a 9. Even with any deductions, that would still be a hit. Rolling again, that's a 3 on the damage table, and the 3 on the damage table is we reduce by the morale again. Okay, so the British morale is dropping rapidly. In fact, it's seesawing a little bit at the moment, but overall it's on a downward trend. Right, that's it then. The only thing that remains to do in turn 9 is to finish up the combat for the British turn, and then we're going to be moving on into turn 10. So let's do the combat. There's only the 2 combats this time. Those guys won't participate. They won't participate because they're artillery. So it's a 4 and 8 versus 6, which is going to be 1 to 1, or is it 2 to 1? It's going to be 2 to 1, isn't it? No, it's not. It's going to be 1 to 1. This is rounding for the defenders, so that's 1 to 1 again. Lead unit is going to be von Specht. This one and Morgan. The British this time will do a frontal assault. They can't do a frontal assault because they don't have a leader, so they will do a attack in echelon. The Americans, meanwhile, will again, they'll roll on that D10, the D8 on that first table, and they've rolled a 2, meaning they withdraw. So attack on echelon with a withdraw is a +1 to the attacker. So that means the British do get that +1 this time. So rolling the die, it's a 6, that's a +1 to a 7. Modifying the result by the morale for the British will give us a +1, but then it's a -2 for the army morale, meaning we drop that back down to 6. And I think that's everything, because the rifle modifier doesn't count when they're stacked with Dearborn for the Morgan unit. I believe that's everything. And so we just need to then think about the defending army, which is going to be a 2, so that's reducing it further down to a 2 to a 4, sorry, by 2 to 4. And that is everything. So we have a 4 on a 1 to 1, which means the attackers retreat. Oh no. Honestly, the British really aren't doing very well. Either that, or I'm just hopelessly failing at playing this game. Right, so they drop back. Nobody else really moves because there's no one stacked in the hex with them. Obviously, there's no advance after combat. Right, so that attack there failed horribly. Here we have Arnold's unit again is being attacked by the Grenadiers. A whole bunch of guys here, which is a total of 5, 10, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so that's a total of 15. The Grenadiers will be the army leading. So it's 15 against 6, which is going to be 2 to 1. Yeah, 2 to 1. And Arnold is the leader for the Americans. There's no equivalent for the British. I think what we'll do as the British side then is we will skirmish, hoping to drive back the Arnold group. Because they have a leader, we need to think about a different table. So they have a leader. Withdrawal is very possible, I would say. And we have a flank. Therefore, we're rolling a d8 on table number 9. That is a 6, which is a skirmish. So skirmish and skirmish is no modifier for the British. They've rolled a 3, which is dreadful, truly dreadful. The +2 modifier for the Grenadiers' morale is negated by the army track, so that's a 0 modifier. The modifiers, there are no further modifiers, it seems. Therefore, the Americans do adjust that further. They take away 1 for the 9th Massachusetts and another 1 for Arnold's combat DRM. In fact, they take away 2, so that's a total of -3 to that 3. So we're on a 0. It's a 0 on a 2 to 1, meaning there is a step loss for the attacking side. Wow, the Grenadiers are losing a step. Okay, that is combat, and they also need to lose another morale point, don't they? So they're wavering now as their official status. Okay, nothing left to do in turn 9, moving into the initiative roll for turn 10. No momentum chips to spend on either side. And we have a 3 versus 1, meaning it is again American initiative first. Right, let's have a think. American movement. Definitely want to move this guy. He's going to be there. He has a nice amount of zones of control to cause havoc with. Arnold also, I think, will move back. I don't really want to have any more grief than necessary, so I'll move back Arnold. I'm moving them as a stack purely for speed. They're all within their stacking limits. And again, let's keep the New Hampshires. Actually, let's move the New Hampshires this way. That's 1.5 cost, and we'll move the New Yorkers here and then here. Okay, we have plenty of zones of control in the Freeman's Farm area. We've also got a unit there, so we are actually stopping the VP for the British. All the British have to do is take that hex, but they do need to have the rest of the area free of American zones of control, whereas the Americans need to have adjacent units in that same region. Let's move the militia. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, cool. I don't think I'll bother doing anything else. There's no garrison there, but we can't move that artillery unit due to the fact that the American artillery basically can't move unless they're forced to, which makes them very static. In fact, the whole American army really is quite static, unless you have a game that flows far differently from this one, I imagine. Right, that's it. There is nothing else for the Americans in terms of movement. Therefore, we move to rally. There's no American rallying required. Defensive artillery fire. Defensive artillery fire. We have a 5 at a range of 2 to Arnold, and we'll try and shoot whichever is the biggest in the stack. So that is going to be the 9th Massachusetts. I believe a strength of 5 and a range of 2. We're hitting on 7. Yeah, strength of 5, range of 2 is a 7, and they've rolled a 6. Ouch. Okay, modifiers don't do anything to that number in this instance, therefore that's an unsuccessful. A 2 strength cannon here will fire, and a 2 at an adjacency is a 6, and that's a 0. That's terrible, truly terrible. Again, no modifiers to the positive, at least they're behind a field work, so that would actually reduce that to a -1, which is even worse. So nothing there for the British and their allies to shout about. This unit here cannot fire because they are they're blocked by line of sight. Oh, back there we go. Line of sight blocks the Pausch artillery cannon from hitting the Morgan unit. Okay. The Spangenberg unit there also cannot see due to the presence of their own side. Right, okay. Rifle fire. Could shoot at the disrupted unit, I guess. Try and eliminate them. Shall I do that? Yeah, why not? That's a 4+. Rolled a 6, deduct the 1 for the fact that they are in the forest, deduct another 1 for the fact that we are firing at light infantry, but we've hit them nonetheless because it is a 4+, and 4, we have a retreat. So we're actually forcing those guys to retreat. Okay, so we are pushing the disrupted unit back ever more. Right, close combat, I think. And we've actually managed to prevent close combat in the Freeman's Farm area, which is good for the Americans as far as I'm concerned right now. And then we have the attack at the top there to resolve, which is pretty small on the screen, I appreciate. But take my word for it, there is a 4 and a 6 stacked with Burgoyne. That's the 29th, sorry, the 20th and the 2nd, sorry, the 21st Fusiliers. Right, okay. So there's a 6 strength unit attacking the 3 strength 5th Massachusetts. The numbers on there are quite small for me to read, I'm afraid. Right, okay, so that is a 1-to-1 attacking across the fieldworks. Artillery on both sides do not count. The attackers in this instance will actually be the Americans, who really don't want to. But I suppose we haven't got a choice, so we'll skirmish as the Americans. The British can withdraw, but realistically they probably wouldn't at this point since they're trying to attack. So let's do, they have a leader, they have a flank, but let's say it's not plausible, the withdraw. That's table 10, which is rolling a D8, which is a 2. That's commit reserve. So commit reserve against the skirmish is a +1. For the Americans, that's interesting. Okay, rolling that die then is a 0. That's terrible, but it does +2 a 1. The lead unit there is the only one available, which is also a +1, taking it up to 2. There's no leader, nothing else is applicable. Fieldworks don't really count here because the Americans are doing the attacking, not defending, meaning on the defender's side we reduce by Burgoyne's attack strength, which is 1, or his modifier. The 21st Fusiliers have a modifier of 1, but that's actually a -2 currently, so we're actually back at a 2, so it's a 1-to-1 with a 2. Say it's a 1-to-1, it's not, is it? It's a 1-to-2. It's a 1-to-2 with a 1, so the attacker is disrupted. That's really strange. I wish we didn't have to fight quite like this, because sometimes it just doesn't make any sense. Right, so 1, 2, 3. They have suffered that disruption, meaning we've adjusted the morale track. I don't think the British morale track goes up. No, it doesn't. The artillery, I think, will have to also play their morale. Let me just check. Okay, I believe they do. I believe we need to roll morale for those artillery units as well, so that's a +5. And we've got a 9, that's cool, they stay put. Alright, awesome. Now we do have a slight challenge though, because when the British attack, those units are basically going to capture, I suspect, that artillery group. Okay, nothing else to do, so we just jump down to the British turn. Movement again. And we're going to move those militia there as a big stack. we're going to move the riflemen, we're going to move the chasseurs and von Rysendal into the forest so that they're not in the zone of control, which is cheaper, and it is also going to be less damaging, I hope, in terms of any artillery rifle fire. And it will free up the grenadiers. The grenadiers will come 1, 2, 3. These guys will come in 1, and then they'll be joined by that group there. Meanwhile, Walker and the 24th will go there. The Germans here will go 1, 2.5, 3, no 4 even because of the terrain. Try and punch out a bit here. We have these units here, 1, 2, 3, 1.5, 2, 1.5, 3.5, 1, 2, 3, and 4. At the top of the map, the fighting 9th are going to come into the forest, and then there they can't go any further because they don't have the movement points. Behind them, Phillips and the infantry recruits are just going to come close-ish. Right, cool, movement done. Need to roll 5+ for those 2 disrupted units. We have nothing for the first one, and the second one we also have nothing. Wow, okay, that's a terrible result there for the British. Again, that's the story of the game for the British side, really. Defensive artillery fire, we need to roll a 7+ to damage the Fusiliers there. That's a 9. Okay, we've hit them on 9. That's impressive. Meaning we roll again. We've rolled a 9 a second time. And a 9 is a step loss and a laser casualty. Ouch. Okay, so the Fusiliers take a step loss. Burgoyne is the casualty, which means they've lost their commander-in-chief, basically, and that did have an effect in the exclusive rules. Basically what it means is the Americans get a momentum chit for having killed the commander-in-chief. Everybody else needs to do a morale check, so that's only the 1 unit, and they failed their morale check, so they have to come back 1. Oh, they can go there. Okay, the artillery, I don't think the artillery does retreat in quite the same way. Actually, I think they do. That's a 2. They failed, so they go back as well. They go back also. Right. Okay, that is fairly diabolical, frankly, for the British. They've taken yet another morale loss. They've lost their leader, several of their leaders, and they're still not really any closer to winning this game. We need to do rifle fire now, which is going to be, again, the Germans against the Grenadiers just there. Sorry, the Morgan against the German Grenadiers. And that's hitting on a 4+. It's a 4, meaning we then roll to hit to wound, which is a 5. And a 5 on the wound table is a retreat. And now we have a problem. They're a strength of 3. They cannot retreat anywhere without taking a step loss. Oh, actually they can. That's only a 2. Okay, so they're going to move there with the 24th. Okay, that's really broken, I think, between those two, the defensive fire and the rifle fire. Those two phases between them really have broken that attack from the British, even before it started. Moving into that attack, though, the combat phase, we have 4 against 6, which is 2 to 3, but we round to 1 to 1 because it's in favour of the defenders. No, it would stay at 2 to 3. Oh wow, that's terrible. Okay, so the first combat we'll do is here, 2 to 3. Do you know what? I don't know what to play. These. Let's play attack on echelon. If I withdraw as the Germans, we're not going to get any chance of winning here, are we? Well, even if we take Freeman's Farm, I don't think we're actually going to win as the British. But anyway, let's keep going. We have attack on echelon. The Americans will roll a d8 on that first table, and they also attack an echelon, which is a no modifier. So rolling the dice for the British, we have a 0. Oh my goodness me, that's awful, isn't it? It's just awful for the British. The modifiers then, we have a +1, which is modified to a negative number due to the morale track, which is going to drop that drop that 0 down to a -1. Nothing else is applicable in terms of the attack. But for the defenders, we then deduct it even further down to basically -3 for the Burgoyne's morale. As before, there's no negative for the fact that Morgan's a rifle unit when he's stacked with Dearborn. Right, that's terrible. That's truly, truly terrible. So a -2, did I say? I think I said -2. A -2 on a 1 to 2 is a capture. And the one we're going to capture is the one underneath. No, sorry, we used the chasseurs for their modifier, didn't we? So they're captured. The one underneath does need to do a die roll modifier. They retreat. Wow, that's terrible. That is truly terrible. Just checking, because that result was an AC, and sometimes there's some special things with those really bad results. Von Riesendorf failed his morale, meaning he doesn't just retreat, he actually retreats 3 and is then disrupted as well. Wow, that is truly, truly bad. I think this game may be over almost for the British. Next combat, which is the Grenadiers and the Earl of Barkars coming up against Arnold's group. Now for the British, this is not a cool combat to be undertaking. It's a 1-to-1. They're at a disadvantage because they don't have a leader. They're at a disadvantage because the morale is at -2 on the army track at the moment. Any further army morale losses and the game is over. The British will have been so demoralised by this scuffle at Freeman's Farm that they will actually stop their attack. Just realised also we still have this combat up the top here to do. Now I'm just wondering what's the best order to do this in, because I think we would actually gain a morale by capturing that artillery unit there. I think it would make sense to capture that artillery unit first. So the artillery unit is captured. The leader is going to be the fighting 9th, who have a +1 modifier. That's this one. These guys are captured, which will help the morale. Then we move forward using the advance after combat. So let's go down to the Grenadier combat against Arnold. So that is going to be a 1-to-1. The British, I really would like to withdraw, but we're not going to be able to because we're surrounded by zones of control and overstacking, so we're going to have to do something like a skirmish. With a leader, the Americans may withdraw, but they may not. Let's say they won't, meaning on here we look at the yellow flashing ones, or the ones with the yellow flashing. The enemy does not have a leader. A flank is possible. Withdraw, let's just say it's plausible, I suppose. So that's attack on table, I think it's table 5. Yeah, table 5. So it's a D8 on table 5. And an 8 means they are going to do a frontal assault. So frontal assault against a skirmish doesn't sound like it's going to be good fun for the British. It's a -2 to the modifier for this attack. Okay, so we have a 9. That's actually pretty good, frankly, as the British, but we potentially can re-roll that as the Americans. Yeah, the Americans will spend that momentum chip to re-roll that. What's this one here? They got it when they killed Bergwijn, so they're going to re-roll that, or force the re-roll. And it's a 9. Wow. Okay, but we still have the -2 from the tactics chit, meaning it's at a 7. We then have another negative because the Grenadier unit only has a +1 modifier, so it's a -1 again, dropping it down to 6. The modifiers here then start to stack 2, so a total of 3 reduction there for Arnold and his lead unit, which is the one directly underneath the 9th Massachusetts. So we've gone down from 9 to, I believe it's a 3, meaning a 3 on a 1-to-1, a retreat for the Grenadiers. Okay, the Grenadiers are going to have to come back. They can't really go anywhere else. They're overstacked everywhere else. Here is not technically a retreat. It's the wrong direction. Can they do that? The priority is away in this direction. I don't think it's going to say they can't. It just says if possible they need to retreat towards the friendly map edge. Well, it's not actually possible. They're not breaking any other rules, so they're okay to just go there. But it does mean the Earl of Buckhurst now has to roll for retreat as well. 7 minus the 2 is a 5. They're okay. Right, but that's not cool at all for the British even now. Final combat then is the militia here coming up against 5, 10. So that's going to be a 2-to-1, and there will be some modifiers for the fact they are militia. The militia realistically would withdraw here, wouldn't they? For the British, but we'll skirmish. The Americans will probably, well, realistically you'd want to withdraw, but let's roll. That's a 4, which is modified according to the solo assistant down to a 3 due to the odds, which is a skirmish. So it's a skirmish and a skirmish, which is a negative. No, it's not a negative, sorry, it's a 0 modifier. So let's roll that again. And that's an 8. This time our unit is the lead unit, is going to be this one here, 1 Rats +1, but that's modified by -2, so we're actually losing a point on that roll, so that's a 7, modified down to a 7. Militia. Okay, defending units are militia, and they're being attacked by at least 1 non-militia, so that goes back up 2 and 8. Cool, no one's surrounded or anything like that. Now we do the defending units. They lose another one, so that goes up to a 9. They actually have a negative morale, the militia there, so that's a 9. Okay, so a 9 or a 2 to 1 may finally do some good for the British. So yeah, there's a 1 step loss, which eliminates that unit. The unit below does need to do a morale check. It's an 8, even with its modifier, it stays put. Okay, that is the end of turn 10. Neither side has achieved an automatic victory condition, meaning there will be one further video showing the end of the game in either turn 11 or turn 12. Hopefully I'll see you for that one. Thank you for sticking with it this far, and in the meantime, happy gaming.